Hello, sir. This is Jella De Silva, and I'll be your host for today's interview. Thanks a lot for giving us your time and agreeing to do this interview. So, you are somebody who has been in the education world for more than 20 plus years. Uh,
30.
could you could you help us understand, sir, what made you choose this path of academia?
Morning, Gelda. Thanks for inviting me to be part of this Pagal Guy episode or podcast. I'm not quite sure how you're going to use this, but happy to be here. I joined the PhD program at University of Texas in 1992. So I guess part of it has to do with the fact that I come from a family of educators. Though if you'd asked me at the age of 21, would I become an educator? I probably would have said, not sure, maybe not. But over a period of time, that's where I gravitated. Also, I think when I joined my job, I was a banker in my earlier life. The banking in the late 80s, early 90s was a little bit not so intellectually stimulating, let's say. And I was talking to my brother, and he said, why don't you come out to the US? So he's still in the US. And maybe you can do a PhD. So I said, yeah, why not? I mean, I was always interested in academics and research and teaching. I come from a family of teachers. So that's how it started. And then since then, it's continued. After my PhD, essentially, as a PhD guy in business, you have two options. You can go into consulting or you can go into academia. Well, you could do a startup also, but those days PhDs didn't do a startup. These days, many more PhDs do a startup. And so I chose to go into academia. I went to London Business School as an assistant professor, and then from there I taught there for 8 years. Came to IIM Ahmedabad in 2004, and then in 2019, 2023, last year, after 19 years at Ahmedabad, I joined MDI Gurgaon. So that's been my journey. I uh, I look at behavioral psychology and its applications um, to pricing, branding, behavior change problems, and over the last 10 years also neuroscience, because behavioral psychology is all between your 2 ears. Between your 2 ears, you've got 100 billion neurons, your brain, and over the last 20 years, 25 years, we have learned a lot about how the brain works. So, for example, if I see something and I want that, and I'm anticipating again, a certain part of my head called the nucleus accumbens will become more active. And I can actually see that happening in real time. So I can predict that, you are probably going to buy this, or you're probably going to do business with this individual. So that has been the nature of my research and teaching and consulting over the last 10 years, which I continue to do at a reduced scale, of course, as a director of this institution.
Got it.
And yeah, that's pretty much it for the last 30 years now.
Got it, sir. So if you look at your career has a lot of leadership positions that you have taken up, right? From being a chairperson to director to a renowned researcher and a public speaker. So if one had to ask you, how has the role of leadership changed in the course of your career? What would your answer be, sir?
So the first leader, I think. So let me first describe to you various vignettes, examples of what different leaders have done in front of me, which has shaped my thinking. So my very first, and I'm going to restrict it to leadership in academia because there are there's leadership outside also. So when I joined as a PhD student at UT Austin, the PhD students of the business school, as part of their orientation, had a session with the vice chancellor of the University of Texas Austin system. Gentleman's name was Dr. Hans Mark. So there were a whole bunch of PhD students, and University of Texas is the flagship. Austin is the flagship campus of Texas. So there were a lot of local luminaries also over there. So after Dr. Mark's talk, there was Q&A, and one of the people in the audience asked Dr. Mark, why is it that we see so many foreign students, myself, over here? Don't we have enough Americans who want to do a PhD? So Dr. Mark's response is still stuck in my head, which is that, I am glad that we have so many foreign students, and I very much hope that more than 50% of them stay back in this country after they finish their PhDs. And then he added, I myself came off the boat in 1946. So he was an immigrant from Europe into the US. So leadership is about having a vision. Vision was very clear, and that's the elite vision, if you will. The consensus in America had been at that time in 1992, no longer the case because today's election in the States is different. Immigration is an issue over there. That we want to encourage immigration of skilled, qualified people. And this is, you announce it at public forums without fear or favor and say it as it is. The next one is when I joined London Business School, there were two people over there. One was Tom Robertson and the other was Paddy Barwise. So Paddy Barwise was my area chair, marketing area chair. Tom Robertson was the deputy dean. So Paddy Barwise one day took me aside and told me that, you know what, Arvind, so I was a new teacher learning how to teach, and new teachers tend to have this thing that I know so much, I want to tell it all to the students, right? So you end up trying to do too much, and real learning does not happen because there's only so much that a student can absorb in a short span of time. So he gave me this mantra that less is more. You actually need less content, and that will lead to more learning. So it took me a while to absorb that, about 2 or 3 years to absorb that and implement it. And so that gave me the second thought about leadership in academia, which is mentorship, right? He actually mentored me through that to understand, how less is more. He called me to his classes, showed me how he taught. So as a faculty member, I sat in on his classes to understand, what this means. Less is more in practice. Very easy to say it and very difficult to understand. What the hell does he mean? Less is more, right? So mentorship. And I've been fortunate over the years to have benefited from mentorship. So vision, mentorship. The third one is when I was at LBS, Tom's academic mentorship. So he was a very renowned researcher. He'd come over from Wharton, and he kind of got me into a couple of projects that helped me to do some publications and so on. So again, a dimension of mentorship. So mentorship doesn't have one dimension; it can have multiple dimensions. Then when I joined Ahmedabad, I am Ahmedabad, so I just returned from LBS, London Business School, and so multiple reasons. Family reasons, professional reasons. The then director made me a full professor. So returned, but clearly there was a pay cut, and the first 2 years were a little bit hard. And I remember going one day to Bakul Dholakia, the then director, and actually showing him my pay slip and saying, can we do something about this? So within 3 days, he called me that there is this company called Lupin, and they are looking for a program director for a program that they want to run. And that program with Lupin, we trained more than 300 managers of Lupin over a 7-year period in different programs. Then got me on the track where I became pretty good at teaching executives and so on. And it led to other programs. And, within 2 or 3 years, money was no longer an issue. I come from a fairly simple, straightforward family where our needs are not much. तो थोड़ा सा पैसा हो जाता है, तो it's more than enough. So earning well beyond that, and happy with that. So as a leader, you have hired someone. Bakul Dholakia had hired me, and then he did what he could to support me. So not just mentorship, but to provide actual support. And then we had a guy called Ashish Nanda, who was another director at IIM Ahmedabad. So he made me the dean of alumni relations. Alumni can be a really powerful support for any institution. And IIM Ahmedabad alumni are a fairly accomplished lot, and many of them, of their own volition, wanted to support the institution in different ways. And at that point in time, we did not have a structured process to help them to give back to the institution. So with Ashish's help, I was able to hire a few people, set up the systems and process in the office of fundraising. And in my 3 years as Dean of Alumni Relations, I got commitments of more than 130 crores from alumni mostly for IIM Ahmedabad. So Ashish kind of, helped me in the process. He had come from Harvard, so he sent me to Harvard to meet the alumni relations people over there. कि आप देख के आए वहाँ पर कैसे होता है, and so on. So I was very happy to report back to him that, so one of the things that I asked the alumni chap at Harvard was, so how good is your database? So if you have like 50,000 alumni, how many of them are in your database? So he said about 70%. So I said, oh, हमारे पास भी उतना ही है. So we are actually in a decent place. So Ashish then told me later that was not what I had sent you to learn. We are, so again, the point being that Ashish kind of helped me in the process of learning the job and raising the money. And then during this process, because I had started doing research on neuroscience, so people started reaching out because there's curiosity, how can this help us, and so on. So people started asking me to come to different public speaking opportunities. So that has kind of scaled over time. So I speak at the Economic Times Masterclass event along with Philip Kotler. I speak at the IMA CEO Forum. I've spoken at recently the NHRDN event in Kerala, another one where a couple of companies have called me to speak within the company. So Procter & Gamble, Titan, and so on. So that has evolved over time. And now as director of MDI Gurgaon, I continue to do that because part of the value add that I bring to the institution is that my engagements with industry and government help to raise the profile of the institution. And I'm engaging not just on an administrative basis, but also on an academic and research and consulting basis. So that automatically helps to raise the profile of the institution to some extent. So I hope that gives you a flavor for the journey.
Got it, sir. So we see that your journey is influenced by a lot of wonderful leaders, as you mentioned. So if you had to pick 3 skills that are extremely essential for leaders in today's global and digitalized world, what would those skills be? And how is MDI Gurgaon helping students achieve those skills?
So I think leadership skills essentially require a key skill that is required these days in a global digitalized world is the ability to connect the dots, if you will. What do I mean by that? So I might be sitting here in Gurgaon, but the fact that China has blockaded Taiwan twice, a show of blockade twice in the last 3 weeks, is a relevant piece of information for international trade, and that may have some direct relevance to exchange rates, which may have some direct relevance to what job opportunities might be available to me in the coming year. So, you have to be able to connect the dots. Good leaders today have to be able to connect the dots. The second one is you need to be competent in some technical skill. If you look at the top leaders in companies, and especially in companies, they tend to have some core skill that they have nurtured over the years, whether it's technology companies, whether it's pharma companies, whether it is FMCG companies. They have some core skill. Sometimes it's a hard skill, technology. Jensen Huang, the NVIDIA CEO, or Sundar Pichai, the Google CEO. So they have some hard skills that they've grown up with. Bill Gates, very, very highly intelligent person, but also some hard skills that he brought to the table. So you have to have some hard skills that you need to be conversant with and that you need to keep up with over time. This is, I would argue that it's also true for government to an extent. And the third key skill is behavioral competencies, right? in fact, in terms of precedence or in terms of order, probably I would put behavioral competencies at the top. That if you do not have the patience to listen, if you react too quickly instead of responding carefully, that if you do not have emotional resilience, how do you take failure? Because we will fail, everyone will fail in some of their initiatives. How do you build and nurture relationships over time? Because we are tending to be much more transactional these days. Do something and then it's over. It's gone. It's no longer registered on the mind or on your brain or on your heart in any way. So those are some key skills, behavioral skills that we need to pick up. Emotional stability, for example. Sometimes these days you find young people do not have the strong family or friends relationships that makes them a little isolated, and then they run into all sort of psychological issues, psychiatric issues. We have faced them in different institutions across India and outside. So it's a global phenomenon, not just here. So those are the three, I think, key skills that are required. Connecting the dots, some hard skills and some behavioral skills. And at MDI, our attempt actually is to build our entire curriculum focus activities around these three things, right? So people need to have a good grasp of stuff like presentation skills, data visualization skills, maybe some Python or R programming, or if they are a PGDM HR, you need to understand employment law and performance management systems, how to construct one, some hard skills and so on. Then we have a whole bunch of courses on leadership and behavioral competencies that allow you to assess yourself and then to be able to develop better behavioral competencies, and then courses which allow you to connect the dots. So we are working to strengthen all three, to improve all three. We started a center on artificial intelligence and applications in business earlier this year. That center is now doing a project for the Competition Commission of India on how AI will influence competition and what should we be doing in terms of the legal framework to keep AI and governance and its impact on competition within some boundaries. Some proof of concepts are happening for a large construction company, equipment company maker. Then we have started a center for behavioral science and a neuro lab where we help people to understand what's happening in their heads when they are faced with some stimuli. So we are doing a couple of projects, one for a billboard company and one for an automotive company. We also have a PhD student. So one PhD student did an interesting project where she looked at the question of whether if I give a prompt to an AI and to a human to design a particular, let's say, ladies' handbag, some very specific prompt. So each one of them designs a handbag, right? One is designed by an AI, one is designed by a human. And because the prompts are fairly specific, the designs are somewhat similar. And then we ask, who to respondents, which one do you like more? And while they are responding, we image their heads to understand what is driving their liking or lack of liking. So doing some interesting work over here, which kind of combines the hard skill and the soft skill part that we talked about. So we're doing some interesting stuff, I think, which brings together hard skills, behavioral skills, and connecting the dots.
Got it, sir. So MDI Gurgaon has a legacy of more than 50 plus years. In addition to providing innovation, entrepreneurship, and inspirations to the students. How are you using this legacy in order to help your students or benefit the current business aspirants achieve the kind of career that are going to be available in the future?
So if I start off from that last point of what you said, the careers which are going to be available in the future. So those careers essentially will be a combination of these three things. Some set of hard skills, behavioral competencies, which are non-negotiable, and the ability to connect the dots to do critical thinking, analysis, and synthesis at the same time. And so at MDI, we are trying to make sure that we provide a combination of all three. The interesting thing for us as an institution also is that we are probably in terms of physical location, we are the most closely, we are the most proximate to businesses amongst the leading business schools anywhere in the country. Because we're sitting in the heart of Gurgaon, where within like a 10-15 kilometer radius, you pretty much have every company that you can think of, either the headquarters or a very large setup over here. So I think the combination of our focus on providing a mix of hard skills, behavioral skills, and connecting the dots, critical thinking, analysis, and synthesis, and our physical location, and very strong faculty that does a great job in the classroom, uh, builds relationships with students also, and also provides some hard skills and a little bit of pastoral care also to the extent that we can in these busy times. I think provides a very key value add for a lot of our applicants and people who join. And I'm beginning to see some of that impact happen in alumni who have been connected to the institute through the faculty, right? So there is one who has approached the institute and is helping us to work with our admissions process. How can we improve our admissions process, right? And the reason this is happening is because not just because they are working in that space, but because they have remained connected to the institute through a couple of faculty. And so for them, it's a way of kind of giving back to the institute that provided the platform to them to achieve what they have over the last 20 years. So I think for us, the benefit to business degree aspirants essentially is that if you come to MDI, you will end up being prepared in a way that will help you hit the ground running with institutions of your choice to a very large extent. And of course, one has to also add in the same breath that ultimately, like any education, it is a function also of the effort that the MBA aspirant makes. The teacher or the institution can only carry you that far unless you are also willing to put in the slog, the hard work, the time, and come to the whole issue with the attitude, okay, I'm going to make it happen. The institution or the teachers can only do so much. But provided you're prepared to work, I think MDI will help you reach your aspirations.
Got it, sir. So speaking of the current admission cycle, we are looking at having a new batch of students coming across for the MDI program. What, according to you, sir, is an ideal profile for MDI Gurgaon, be it from a personality perspective or a quality perspective? What are the few things that MDI looks for in a candidate before, sending across that admission offer?
So the entire criteria is already up there on our website. So on that admissions, I cannot add anything beyond that, right? Having said that, ultimately, I think if there were one thing that I would be looking for as a teacher, this is my personal opinion, not an institutional opinion. If there were one thing that I was looking for, I think it would be a willingness to learn, right? If somebody is coming into an institution or joining a job for that matter with the attitude that, I already know it all, that makes life difficult for everyone. So a willingness to learn, I think, as a teacher, I would say that.
So, what advice do you have for students who are currently preparing for the selection process? Any tips that can help the students, ace the selection process? Or what are the things, like a checklist that they can keep in mind in order to make their preparation a better one?
I think students are way smarter than me on this entire checklist, and they will probably give you a much more detailed and accurate answer on this one. For us, we are looking for, a different combination of hard skills, soft skills, ability to connect the dots, and so on. And some of these come from the CAT exam. Some of these come from the interview, the GDPI. group discussion and personal interview. Some of it we infer from other data that is part of the admissions process and so on. So, but having said all of that, let me go back to my first response that the checklist is probably something that, if I'm to give a checklist, it will probably be an inaccurate one. Probably students have a better checklist than I can give them.
Got it, sir. Sir, once a student is enrolled for a 2-year MBA or during in the MBA program, though that journey becomes extremely crucial, what kind of an approach does an individual need to have in order to make sure that they are having the best advantage or the best experience during this journey?
I think there are 2 or 3 things that people have to be very conscious of. The first is that if you come to any top ranked institution like MDI Gurgaon, there's a whole bunch of stuff that you can be doing. And so you need to have a fairly clear sense of the priorities on what you want to focus on. And you need to then allocate your time judiciously. So that's one thing that I believe will solve a lot of issues. Because sometimes there is a tendency when you come to an institution like this, and I've seen this at IIM Ahmedabad also, and I see this at MDI Gurgaon, this prominent corporate speaker has come, so I must go and listen to him. Or there is this workshop on some hard skill, I also want to do this. I also have these courseworks. Oh, there is this sport, and I'm really interested in these inter-college sports. So I want to be a part of that also. I also want to do exchange and so on. So the number of potential activities is very large. The bouquet is very large, and sometimes there is this idea that I want to do it all. That's not possible, right? So one has to prioritize and one has to allocate time judiciously. So that is one key thing that I would kind of think would allow people to maximize the value that they get over here. The second is that education ultimately is a product where value is obtained only as a function of the effort that the person is putting in. Sometimes people come in with the idea that, I have कि मैंने फीस तो भर दिया है, अब जो है मेरा काम हो गया है. But in education it doesn't work like that. So that's the second key idea that one needs to keep in mind. Other than that, I think our students, all students, not just our students, I think all students who go to the top schools like IIM Ahmedabad or MDI Gurgaon, they are fairly sorted in many ways, and I think they are able to make good choices most of the time, and our job is to help them to make the best choices, not just the good choices, and also to help them understand that sometimes the good is not necessarily an enemy of the best. So let me leave it at that.
Perfect. Well said, sir. Thanks a lot for that insight. Thanks a lot for joining this interview and giving us your time. I believe your insights are really going to be helpful for students. So anyone who's joining MDI Gurgaon would definitely, look forward to having your insights. And anybody who's starting their journey for MBA would definitely benefit from what you have said. With that note, sir, before you leave us, uh, I want to ask you my last question, which is a question that I ask all the dean and directors that I interview. So, what, according to you, is an MBA? And if you could explain it in less than 10 words.
uh, I can't explain it in 10 words, so you have to give me 2 minutes.
Got it, sir.
So let me kind of first say that an MBA is a 100-year-old product, right? It's actually more than a 100-year-old product. And going forward, this product needs to evolve. It is evolving. How does it need to evolve? So when it starts, 100 years ago, 100 plus years ago, you're teaching the basic stuff, debit and credit. This is distribution. This is the bullwhip effect in the supply chain. These are the 4 Ps of marketing and so on. So that's what the MBA used to be. It prepared you to do a managerial job in business, right? Over a period of time now, what has happened is that not only is it supposed to prepare you to do a managerial job in business, the managerial job itself has evolved into multiple categories, if you will. And there are so many different types of managerial jobs. Consulting, of course, remains a large recruiter among from the top schools, including MDI Gurgaon. Uh, but if you look at the skill sets that are required, they are now diverging a bit. In the 70s, 80s, and 90s, the skill set that were required across different areas were pretty much the same. They did not matter. Now, the skill sets which are required to go into a big six consulting firm versus to go into a general management role in a large conglomerate like the Tatas or Aditya Birla and so on, uh, or to go into some manufacturing kind of companies like Hero MotoCorp or JSW and so on, they are diverging a bit. So that means the MBA also needs to evolve in some ways. I cannot have a one size MBA. And the question for us is therefore, how should we evolve? And the answers are not yet clear because we are still in the process. One straw in the wind that's definitely there is that we will probably see a higher level of specialization, if you will. Within the general MBA, there will be people who will come with specific skill sets. That is already happening, will probably happen some more. So, what is an MBA? I think an MBA prepares you for life. If you really invest your time well in an MBA, you will be much better prepared for life as compared to almost any other degree.
Got it, sir. Thanks a lot, sir, for joining Pagal Guide.